There are milestones in the life of a nation that alter perspective and direction. One of them, for Canada, was the Man in Motion tour. Rick Hansen, in a groundbreaking accomplishment, traveled in his wheelchair 40,000 kilometers over 2 years through 34 countries to raise $26 million for spinal cord research. 30 years later, a celebration of courage, strength, and the power of community. A new book shares the riveting journey, and I am thrilled to say that Rick Hansen joins. I can almost not say that, Rick, without getting choked up. I can't believe it's 30 years.
Well,
can you?
Hard to believe, Lisa. You know, it's gone by so fast, and yet looking back, it's still such a special memory, and it's actually a little bit of a different perspective as well, and that's why we decided to do this book, is pay tribute to the amazing team and the power of community to help a young kid from Williams Lake, or anyone who has a dream.
See, for us, people like me and everybody watching this, most people watching this, it was about being on a curb in some city or town across this country and cheering you on. But the book conveys the hell that unfolded. How many times you wanted to quit because of the wind and the rain and the struggle.
Yeah, there were some really dark times. You know, you have this big dream of how it's going to be, and then off you go, and then the first brick wall hits you, like all of a sudden the winds are in your face and it's 0 degrees and rain, and you're injured with tendonitis, and you can barely think of the end of the day, let alone the tour. And then comes just in front of you the Siskiyou Mountain Range, which is 5,000 foot summit, and you need desperate help. And in comes the cavalry in Amanda, the physiotherapist, to change the outcome of the tour, and of course my life, become my wife.
Became your wife.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the stories. As I said, honestly, I needed a box of Kleenex to go through the book, but the Amanda story is so beautiful, that this is the woman who was your physiotherapist when you were an athlete, a wheelchair athlete. People may not remember, though, and I want you to take us back to the 15-year-old boy and the day this all started.
You know, I was hitchhiking home from a fishing trip, you know, wide-eyed, bushy-tailed, filled with optimism. Wanted to represent my country one day at the Olympic Games, hopefully, and got a ride in the back of a pickup truck, and the guy crashed and rolled over, shattered my spine, damaged my spinal cord, and, you know, I was told I'd never walk again.
Would that boy have ever envisioned the man today and what you've accomplished?
You know, Lisa, I probably would have sold my soul for the use of my legs. You know, I thought my whole life had been washed up, hopes and dreams shattered, and couldn't see anything except loss, despair, and really I had all these, you know, built-in intrinsic biases about, you know, what it was like to have a disability, and so I thought it was about something and someone to be pitied, no hope or possibilities to lead a meaningful life, and so I needed to literally start from ground zero, and needed role models to come in to show me the way. I needed family, friends, and community to support me during tough times, and realize, I guess, ultimately that, you know, it's not what happens to you, it's what you do with it that counts, and that nowhere in the definition of an athlete does it say you have to use your legs in order to be one.
And you know, we are all blessed this week in Toronto to be watching exactly that unfold with the Wounded Warriors and Invictus Games, and I know you're an ambassador for the game.
I am.
But you were also a role model for all those men and women competing this week.
Well, it comes full circle, because as a kid, you know, Paralympic sport movement was actually formed by returning veterans from World War II, and you know, it gave me this hope and possibility, and now I'm able to come back and to encourage that next generation of you know, servicemen and women who have paid the ultimate price, and encourage them to keep going, and they're encouraging each other, and they're also pushing forward on social change, and that's the spirit that you love to see, and it's what my mission is, you know, for my whole life, which is to help people see that barriers are removed, anything's possible.
But I can't help but think, you know, as we watch these athletes from around the world coming to Invictus Games, airports today, pretty much everywhere, there is wheelchair accessibility. But for you...
When we started, yeah, the world was very large, disconnected, and inaccessible. And that was the reason why I started the Man in Motion Tour as a Paralympic athlete. You know, everything was a struggle. You know, the attitudes of others, the physical barriers, taxis wouldn't stop for you. You could barely get into an airplane if you were lucky. Hotels, forget it, gymnasiums or tracks, you know. And so, expressing that with my colleagues, we had this level of frustration, but rather than complain about it, it was like, well, do something about it, and pay it forward. Take your talent, get a dream, do something that would make a difference. And that's how the Man in Motion tour was formed. And it was a naive attempt to create a movement, but at least we did our best to make a baby step forward. And yeah, we're really proud of the community that's continued since the end of the tour to keep pushing forward one change at a time. And when an airport is accessible for the next generation, you feel a sense of motivation and accomplishment that we're getting there.
I know that for you, growing up Williams Lake, you were the only kid in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
Today, you look at our population now, the aging baby boomers. It is very, very familiar. It's like
true.
1 in 7 or something like that.
That's right. Well over 4 million adults with disabilities, and by 2035, it'll be 1 in 5 with aging boomers. And it's not just people in wheelchairs. It's people with varying disabilities, visual, hearing, mobility, those invisible disabilities that you can't see, but equally or even more devastating. And what we need to do is reframe our view of what we think accessibility for all is. Maybe even our symbols of disability, no longer the stick man in a wheelchair, a person in motion, that anyone could be expressive if barriers were removed. And that's the evolution that's taking place. And I think that with that comes more attention, more responsibility, because it's not just a charitable issue or human rights issue. It's an economic and cultural imperative, and Canada has to stay sustainable, and we need everybody on board playing their role, doing their part. And
politically, where do you think we are in this country as far as measuring up in change?
That's the key, isn't it? We have great words, beautiful words in our Constitution, the most progressive Constitution in the world about including people with disabilities as equals. But we're relatively light on translating that to bedrock, legislation and law as a social safety net.
Like, where does it fall short?
Well, it fell short because you don't see every province in the country with progressive legislation, every municipality anchored, every element of the federal government, although the good news is the federal government is committed to bring that forward this year. This year, that's 35 years, post, the declaration of our Constitution. So we need that in place so that there's that security that, that this is the cost of the values that we state, and they have meaning. And then we can't be caught in our today's minimum standards because they become tomorrow's handicaps. So let's drive forward. And measuring up allows us to make a statement like this. In 30 years, Canada will be completely accessible. And so let's measure up and find out objectively where we are, and then let's drive forward and incent the whole nation to be able to do that. And the minimal costs of doing that will be completely offset by the amazing infusion of capacity, financial, cultural, and human wealth. And so that's my vision.
Wow, you are absolutely the man. We know from the last 30 years, you are the man to carry that message forward. And I thank you so much for joining us today. It's just always an honor, but especially, as I said, emotional. The book is called Rick Hansen's Man in Motion World Tour. Rick, great to talk to you.
Thank you. You too, Lisa.